This is a journey into sound.
Brought to you in living color on
WTDI.
I'm Tonio Epstein. It's the Magical Mystery Tour. Join us as we dive into the heart of things, exploring new ideas and new ways of seeing and being in this wondrous, crazy world we share together.
Lying on your back in the grass, you can't see a thing except for the clear blue sky, a few cotton wool clouds, higher and higher in the great dome of the sky, filling it with song. Higher and higher, filling it with song. Filling it with song. They sound quite mad, don't they?
My guest is Marguerite Rigoglioso. She's a PhD scholar and priestess and founder and director of the Seven Sisters Mystery School and a world-renowned teacher of sacred knowledge and the foremost authority on the history of virgin birth. She draws on her decades-long research and experiences with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene to help uncover their hidden teachings and apply them to our present-day needs. She's an award-winning author of several books, including The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births, and her new book is The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. So Marguerite, welcome back to the Magical Mystery Tour.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Tonio. We had such a wonderful conversation last time we were together a few years ago, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. And one of the things that I enjoy about you so much is that you're so unabashedly out of the box with a wildly open mind.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah. I think those were some of the boxes I ticked off when I came into this lifetime. Unabashedly out of the box, a wild open mind.
Yeah, it just makes life so much more interesting and enjoyable.
Oh gosh, for sure.
I also really enjoyed reading about your aversion to the conventional modeling of Mary, as a perfect, pure, sexless, demure, obedient vessel for a typical male god who just used her as a vessel without consent, and also your aversion to being given the Catholic confirmation name of Mary because of that.
Yeah. I was sort of unwillingly led to take that for confirmation. Of course, now I wear it proudly, but at the time it was an embarrassment.
Yeah, I'm not Catholic, but I can sort of relate to that because when I was a kid, I would observe people, piously going to church on Sundays and then during the rest of the week, reverting back to their assholey nature.
Yeah. That was the word that came up as you were describing. Yes. It's one thing to hear the concepts and it's another to live them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Mother Mary is I believe she truly lived all of this, all of the virtues, so to speak, in the best sense of the word.
Yeah. And she's a living and archetypal embodiment of all of that.
Exactly. And you need it on both levels because it means that she's larger than life, but she's in our life too. So she's accessible. And that's one of the main intentions I've had for this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, was to help people access her in a deeper way than ever before, or maybe for the first time for many people.
Yeah. So how did that happen for you? Because you initially approached Mary from a scholarly, intellectual approach. So how did you shift to a direct embodied experience of her? And also tell us about your initial mystical contact with Mary.
Yeah. So, gosh, decades ago, when I was in my 30s, I started awakening to the goddess movement. the reality of the goddess and who the goddesses were. I just couldn't get enough studying them all over the world. I went to various places on pilgrimages. I was in women's spirituality programs where we were learning a lot about them and having some ritual and experiences around all this. But yeah, I was mostly like coming at it from the student perspective, the reader, the schoolish perspective, even though I was going to these sacred sites and having experiences for sure. And of course, then I went to the California Institute of Integral Studies, which really helped me explore in a dramatically scholarly way all of this material. But along the way, when I was in a women's spirituality program, even before grad school, it was in the Boston area back when I was in my 30s. And one of the modules was about Mother Mary as a goddess. And it just suddenly all came together to me. It was like, oh, of course she's a goddess. She's a manifestation of this great mother energy that is all over the planet. And so I became really, really interested in her. But then it wasn't until after CIIS and I started being invited actually to do presentations about Mother Mary as a divine birth priestess and so forth for events that were ritual in orientation, like the Magdalene Feast Day events that we would do in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And that had a really strong, energetic, lived experience component. We would do these blessing rituals, and there were some of my friends who had these devotions with either Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene, and that influenced me to go deeper into the experiential level. And so, for a while, my research life was going in tandem with my experiential life with the Marys, Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. And there are more than just those two Marys, which we can talk about later if you want. But, so there were different markers along my life that helped me to go deeper into the depths of Mother Mary as a lived presence. And one of them was taking the Holy Womb Chakra System course. It was like a week-long course at the Divine Lineage, or the Divine Mother Center, it's now called, in Laytonville, California in 2017. And the teacher who had already left his body, Sri Kaleshwar, had left this body of teachings. And my teacher, Cindy Lindsay, was transmitting to us that Sri Kaleshwar said that Mother Mary was the greatest holy woman who ever walked the planet, that she helped Jesus not only come to the planet, but resurrect his body and soul at the crucifixion through her womb practices. And so, this was just an amazing revelation for me. But then fast forward to 2018, where I'm in the hospital room, and I start out the book with this story where I woke up from getting a cyst removed on one of my ovaries, and I just felt this wave of Mother Mary's love. I mean, it was without a doubt knowing that she was real, that she was there, that she was available to me. And yes, they had given me ketamine in the anesthesia cocktail, and ketamine is a known mind expander. So what it did was it put me at the vibration where I could actually receive Mother Mary in an energetic way, in a way that I had never done before. And that was really, yet another door opening into the depths of Mother Mary, and me working with her as a real healing and comforting presence, as well as a sacred mentor for people.
So how do you see or experience her? Like, everybody has their own kind of sensorial, or like in my case, I'm a formless kind of a guy, way of connecting with these energies.
Yeah. Well, in that hospital recovery room, I experienced her as unconditional love. It was like a wave, literally. It was like physically palpable, and a knowing beyond doubt that this is one of the frequencies in which she operates and is available. So that's when I'm working with her personally, and, for years since then, that's how I've mainly experienced her and worked with her when I'm working with her as my own personal healer. She's been my remother, so to speak, because I lost my mother when I was 10 years old. She was ill, she had lupus, and she crossed from this realm. And so finding the Divine Mother in the form of Mother Mary, the perfect mother, has been really wonderful for me. And so sometimes when I'm upset, like in the middle of the night, vulnerable and so forth, I'll curl up and just ask her to put her arms around me or take me into her womb. So that's how I work with her on a very personal level. But I also work with her as a spiritual teacher and a spiritual mentor. And when I'm working with her in that way, the information from her more comes through my direct knowing, my oracle, my Sophia wisdom. I wouldn't say that it's got any bodily sensations associated with it, but it's an open channel, if you will, to her information. So I would say those are two of the major ways that I personally work with Mother Mary.
Mhm. Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, and sometimes, Tonio, it's with just meditation, and sometimes it's with sacred medicines like cacao. Cacao is a really wonderful one because cacao opens not only the mind but the heart. So it's a perfect way of accessing Mother Mary. And also for me, one of my plant allies is Lady Cannabis. So as we are recording this, today is the feast day of Mary Magdalene. Tomorrow, I'm giving a private channeling in which I will be working with Lady Cannabis, and we're going to be asking questions of the Marys, all about the Marys, and who are they and what are their messages for us today. So that's going to be really interesting because I don't know what's going to come through. I will be in high oracle state. And this is just an example. I mean, I've done these things before on my Bridging Dimensions show on YouTube. People can find that playlist, and there are occasional shows with that. And it's just thrilling to be an open receptor for this kind of high vibrational information.
So when you say cacao and Lady Cannabis, are these energies that help you to channel?
Yeah, they help me go deeper. So I can be at one level with it with meditation, and that can be pretty good, sitting and getting quiet and just asking Q&A, receiving information. But I go deeper and broader when I'm working with the sacred medicines like cacao. And then cannabis is even more intense because I think it's the vibrational dimensions that it allows you to access, right?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And
Yeah,
if I were to do a higher octane yet, it would be even more intense,
right.
like some of the mushrooms or the vine medicines and so forth. I don't. It's almost a little bit too much for me to have those experiences. So I stick with the plant allies that stretch me just enough to be open.
hmm And ideally, we really want to make this a natural, organic process.
Exactly.
Yeah. Many years ago, I had very powerful experiences with particularly LSD, but
Yeah, as one would.
yeah, yeah. And I think you really only need, you essentially only need one powerful awakening initiatory experience, and then from there, everything unfolds.
Yeah.
Much like they talk about in the Hindu tradition, where the teacher or the guru awakens the inner essence, and then from then on, you don't even need the guru anymore because that
Yes.
that just keeps unfolding. As any true guru will tell you, they're not important anymore because the
Yeah.
guru lives within you. You are your own guru. You
Absolutely.
just need a little help. You need an initiation, an initial awakening.
I so agree. And if only people realize that, they would avoid the troubles and the pitfalls that have happened in these guru disciple relationships that are ongoing and all of the abuses that have unfolded in countless groups of this nature, even with the highest guru, right? It's just quite amazing. And the thing you were saying about the guru is within you, yes. And Mother Mary's continuous message to me, and something that I'm called to transmit, is And really, the bottom line of this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, is that Mother Mary is within you. She is but a mirror of your soul and what you are capable at the higher dimensional frequencies of operation. And so this is all about opening up to that. It's not about worshiping a historical figure or worshiping a goddess on the astral plane. It's about working with this energy, this fractal of Divine Mother that we know of as Mother Mary, to come and open your own fractal up, open your own DNA, your own angelic DNA. That's really what this is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many years ago, during my earlier meditation and spiritual training, we used to work with what we called the divine human prototype. And
Yes.
Mary is an embodiment of that.
She is, because you know why? And this is what I discuss in the book, is that she achieved everything a human would want to achieve at their highest level. She came into her full goddesshood, which is why we don't know if she was a woman or a goddess, because she was a woman who became a goddess because of all of these practices that she had done throughout lifetimes. And so I talk more about this in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, and I really invite people to look into it because her practices are our practices. And, you know, I offer various teachings that help us access these practices and so forth. So this is a road that's open to all of us.
Yes, absolutely. And while Mary is very special, she's only really special in that she's here to serve all of us in that way, to remind us and to reveal to us that everything that she experienced, that she is completely available to all of us.
Yes, absolutely. That is where we are right now. And these Marys are really coming, their energy is really coming strongly on the planet right now because we need this understanding. Again, we need to connect with this. We've been made so passive and we've been fed so much dogma. We've really detached from our natural goddess, God-given abilities, our mastery. And they're just here to say, hey, all of this is possible for you, just as Jesus said in one of the Gnostic Gospels, or maybe it was a canonical gospel even, I can't remember, but everyone was marveling at his miracle abilities. And he said, oh, all this is possible for you and more. You will do this and more. So we need to like get in gear to have this happen on a more regular basis and really awaken these capacities.
And also, these capacities are really, in a sense, they're irrelevant because they're actually just extras. They're extraneous to the most important thing, which is aligning with our own true nature.
That's right. That's right. You know, it's not about becoming a miracle worker and dazzling people, right? It's about just coming into that original divine angelic template so that we can live like that again on earth and restore what was called Eden, restore paradise. This is where we were, and this is where we want to come back to, but on a new rung of the spiral. And that's why this sacred Sophia Christos family, as I refer to them, came on the planet in the incarnation that we know them as Jesus, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and others, you know, approximately 2,000 years ago.
And this is something we all need to realize in order to make that happen.
I feel so, you know, and they are just one family, one personality structure of the great divine that can be accessed. People can get this in other cultures, in other ways. They are not the only way, which is where I think the missionary impulse went wrong, because they thought, oh, no, this particular template and imprint is what everyone needs. So we need to impose this over all the other traditions when these other traditions had perfectly good ways of accessing these very energies. And then it became, you know, a Holocaust horror show for many indigenous peoples around the world. And it turned into its opposite. You know, it got hijacked and co-opted. And instead of being a source of illumination, it became a source of imprisonment and suffering and torture on the planet. And that's why a lot of people reject Christianity and certainly reject the colonization that Christianity engaged in. And it's not about Christianity. It's about the essential messages underneath that are universal, pretty much, to all traditions when you go deep enough.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, after Jesus passed on, it was the women and probably largely the followers of Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene who were the spiritual teachers and leaders at the time. And they were openly sharing and spreading the direct practice of, direct experience of divine love, rather than what has happened to the various Christian churches where it becomes this male dominated mediation trip.
That's right. And even though the Gospels and even the Gnostic Gospels make it look like it's a male show, with the exception of Mary Magdalene, who pops in occasionally, the historical documentation, textually and visually, attests to women being in the majority in the early quote unquote Christian church in terms of the leadership. Just like today, you go to any spiritual event at Omega, at Kripalu, at Esalen, wherever, 1440 University, if they're still doing that. Who is there? It's like 80 to 90% women, because they're the ones who hold the esoteric information. They're always the harbinger of the growing edge. So same now as 2024 years ago, right? The women were in the lead about it, but because of the patriarchal energies on the planet and the political structures and the stealing of the leadership power, the women became denigrated. Mary's image became downcast eyes instead of upraised hands in the errant posture that we see in her earliest depictions. These discussions are what I get at in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, and I highly encourage people to check into that and really absorb that information for yourself, because this is not just about historical artifacts. This is about us today and what we need to absorb and understand as true so that we know the direction we can go in to turn this clam bake around and the craziness that's going on that seems to be intensifying all the time.
Yeah. And looks like it's just going to get more so.
I mean, my God, it's like a bad movie. The events of the last 2 weeks, if this were in a movie, I would have turned the movie off, which is why I don't look at the media. There's so much weirdness that's being promulgated through the media. You never really even know what's truth, what's not, So what's truth is our divine nature, our true divine nature, as you referred to before. That's what we want to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been about 3 years since we talked about your last book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception. So since then, what more have you learned and discovered about Mary and the sacred womb chakra? And especially, what new insights have you had about all of this that's really exciting you?
Yeah. This is an ongoing evolution. My exploration is like a fractal that's unfolding. It's continually going. And just when I think I've completed my understanding of something, new angles or new dimensions of it pop up, even in the divine birth realm, about what these women really were up to. And like one of the major things that's come up in terms of the divine birth practices of these women, and that's not even getting to the other stuff we're going to talk about, which is the other stuff about Mother Mary's life is what's in the new book. But even looking at the divine birth material, I've known this for years. I've been a student and a lecturer about the Pleiades, the 7 mothers of the world, the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. And I recently connected with William Henry. I don't know if you're familiar with him, or maybe your listeners are. He's a massive mystery teacher on the planet. He's written many books. He's been a producer, The Soul of Ancient Aliens, a prolific lecturer, and he's keyed into my work. So we've done some things together. And he has really helped me understand even more strongly the connection between Mother Mary and the Pleiades, because they are all divine birth priestesses. And these 7 sisters of the Pleiades, who in the lore of many, many indigenous traditions all over the world are the genetic mothers or the genetic encoders of large portions of humanity. Even going back into the Greek tradition, they talk about this, that Mother Mary is in that lineage of these women who come to the planet, these feminine beings who come to the planet to bring higher level seed to us. And so it's just been really exciting seeing William's thrill around the Pleiades, and then it inspires my oracle to open up further. And so in one of these oracle ceremonies that I did online, I believe on my YouTube channel, Bridging Dimensions, I received that mother. So the Pleiades are known as the seven doves, and I call them the seven mothers of the world, and numerous traditions around the world see them as that. And they are equated with doves, and that is the totem symbol by which they're identified. And there is this symbolism of Mother Mary being like a dove, or eating like a dove, or eating from the doves in her gospel. And so what I received as an oracle is that, oh, Mother Mary is the eighth dove mother of the world. So it didn't stop just at the seven sisters of the Pleiades. She's the eighth. So she came in to bring in the Jesus avatar. And that to me was just an amazing revelation that, didn't come from my intellectual mind. That came from the oracle space. So that's one example. And then in terms of Mother Mary's life, yes, this exploration that has led to this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, has uncloaked many, many other aspects of who Mother Mary is and was and shall be. The leader of the early church, essentially, the mentor of all of these women and men during and after the crucifixion, her own capacities as a healer, as an exorcist, as a woman who could bring the dead back to life. She had many skills that she had developed. And I look into that. I describe all of that in this book and more. So those are just a few tidbits. How's that, Tonio?
Sounds great. Yeah, there's that old saying that need is the mother of invention. And since she was kind of like on the forefront of that, she was like the representation of this divine energy coming into the world to serve on a very broad level. So
Yes.
to me, it seems very natural that she would have developed all of these very powerful and quote unquote otherworldly abilities.
Yeah. She is a world mother. And what I discuss in the book extensively in one of the chapters is her full ascension to divinity. So a lot of us in the spiritual community these days are talking about ascension. I call it inscension because I feel like it's an ever inward journey or an inside job. But she did have that full ascension at the end of her life. She transformed her status from human into full-blown goddesshood. She merged with Mother Divine. And she actually, according to Sri Kaleshwar, she accomplished it in her lifetime while she was walking on the planet, which is really how she was able to divinely conceive Jesus. But at the end of her life, she did make that big, huge transition into goddesshood. And that's where she dwells today, in that net of feminine presence that's all around the planet and all around the universe and maybe the multiverse. And that's the net that we can enter in this lifetime. You can access it in this lifetime and certainly in our crossing over to the other side. And these are the practices that we're retrieving and developing for ourselves now.
So Mary, from the outer perspective, she represents the feminine side of things. But this is not a feminine versus masculine thing, because this is something that's available to all of us. So in the past year, I've had a couple of sessions with energy healers who channel, and when they were working with me, each of them separately said that they sense a mother goddess energy connection to me.
Yeah.
And last night I had a dream where I was walking through this huge house, and there were all these boys and young men. They were all eating all the leftover food from this huge banquet. And I was just walking through, unmoved by any of what was going on. And then I walked up to a mirror and I saw this beautiful woman wearing a white, kind of snake-like dress.
Mhm. Well, that's a very timely dream, just in advance of our conversation, because the greatest mystery initiation that would happen in the Gnostic world was called the bridal chamber. And it was something that had to happen inwardly before it would happen for literally a couple. And what it was restoring the inner androgyne, the inner hermaphrodite, right? Because what I've come to learn in the past year since I've started offering different types of courses is that, lo and behold, in the Gnostic Gospels, it tells us that the original human form was hermaphroditic, both male and female. Now, there were 3 different types according to the Greeks. One was male-female, one was female-female, one was male-male. But at some point, these negative archonic forces split those beings, split us, and created a trauma and a terrible longing for our counterpart. And so the bridal chamber is all about restoring the inner androgyny. And so what I've realized is that the ability to conceive a child divinely without male sperm requires the woman to become the androgyne inwardly to the point where she can fertilize her own egg. And this is what these priestesses were all about. So Mother Mary had to be a strong androgyne, right? And it's known that Jesus was a strong androgyne. You know, he had a lot of feminine qualities and he had a lot of women around him. And so I feel that that dream is telling you that you are both. You are the male, you are the female, and it is showing you your female higher nature, which is that white goddess. That is the dove. That is Mother Mary. I saw in my medicine ceremony that, oh, that's why they called the Pleiades the doves, because that was the nearest symbol that humans could give in 3 dimensions to what they look like, which is like a winged white being. And you saw the snake skin, which is another element. Like there's snake energies, there's winged energies. This is the winged female serpent is really what you were seeing. That's the female Quetzalcoatl. That's the Mother Mary, essentially. So, you know, you are being shown this is who you are. This is where you're going. And it certainly casts a different light on the whole transgender movement.
Well, the whole bridal chamber thing and marriage, you know, there's talk about the divine marriage, and then, you know, how Christianity and many religions have codified that into law on the physical plane.
Yes.
Kind of locking us into a prison and forgetting
No.
what the original intent is, the inner marriage of the masculine and feminine energies.
That's right.
And that process is essential for our evolution, because we can't grow. We can't be initiated out of adolescence unless we learn how to recognize those energies as energies, that masculine and feminine is not an outer thing to be worshipped in some disconnected, separative kind of way.
Yes. Yes, this is such a key to our awakening, to our healing, to our ascension, and to reversing the craziness of these times. It's about this inner marriage, this inner cultivation of the duality as expressed as the masculine feminine, which is a primordial duality. It is expressed throughout every level of the hologram. So there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of play to be done. And, you know, Mother Mary and the Marys are here for this, because Mother Mary represents the inner marriage who stayed within herself, the virgin or the sovereign. And Mary Magdalene represents the one who accomplished the inner marriage, but then went into the tantric relationship marriage with Jesus, which many people have been coming to understand over the last 40 years, that they were literally tantric partners, perhaps spouses, and had one or more children together. So that's the sacred marriage on the high ritual level, two humans physically coming together who are already united within themselves. So it's almost like a foursome coming together, if you will.
Right. In order for the outer to truly reflect the inner and vice versa, we have to accomplish that inner marriage first as the foundation.
That's right. And, you know, it's no small task. And our relationships are only as strong as our own inner unification. And you can see where a relationship is a little bit skewed or not quite in alignment based on that, you know, where we can get into codependencies, or we can get into worshiping, but then feeling deeply disappointed. We can get into abusive behaviors. We can get into strange patterns that are trying to make up for the lack of inner unity, but it's not a healthy relationship. So, you know, there's so much here emerges out of this whole discussion of the sacred Sophia Christos family.
Mm-hmm. And this is also directly related to the womb chakra. And one of my senses about the womb chakra is that we actually do all of this work inside the womb chakra. And it's not like the womb chakra only exists inside of us. We exist inside of it as well. And there's a quantum aspect of the womb chakra that it encompasses the entire universe and pluriverses, as well as existing inside of us. Right?
You know, this is why I love you, Tonio, because you so get it, you know, and then you make these statements that are like, oh my God, yes, you know, so true. And I'll add to what you're saying that the womb chakra, yes, it's more pronounced and stronger in women because we have the particular anatomy. And this is why women will always be at the forefront of these esoteric movements, right?
As they should.
Yeah, right. Because we carry that. We kind of got the benefit when the sexes were split. We actually got the better half in the sense that we could do more with it.
You have the embodied experience of it, whereas men have to approach it from a different angle, a more abstract angle, which is always, you know, ready to be exploited in all kinds of ways.
Hijacked. Yeah. But Sri Kaleshwar, you know, the late Hindu saint who I mentioned earlier, is the one who brought the Holy Womb Chakra teachings back to visibility on the planet in the last 20 years. He left his body in 2012. But he was teaching them. He retrieved this information from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts written on palm leaves with the mantras and yantras and formulas and concepts and things about the Holy Womb Chakra and more, many other teachings as well. But he said that Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and Jesus, among others, not only used these practices, but contributed to the knowledge and the palm leaf manuscripts. And he says that men have the fragrance of the holy womb in them, in that they also have what's known as the Nada Bindu point, which is the energetic point, portal point, really, 1.5 inches below the navel. It's a floating point. So they can access that holy womb energy through that portal point, through that 0 point. And you can also, of course, access it through connecting in a loving way to your mother, or to a female soulmate, and also particularly a female love partner, you know, a sexual partner, but it can be a female soulmate that doesn't have a sexual component. It's just connecting to the sacred feminine through living embodiments of the sacred feminine are a 3-dimensional way that men can access this holy womb chakra energy. And of course, as you're saying, knowing that we are always nestled within the holy womb chakra, which is a universal. It is the structure of our whole reality.
Mm-hmm. So that's a nice way of explaining why I've always been drawn to women in that sort of a way. That feminine nature within me has always been drawn to women in that sort of way. And that for me, it was never motivated sexually, you know, in a outer physical sense. That only developed later on. But I was drawn to this inner kind of merging, well, not just kind of, but actual melting together and merging together into the formless state. You know, the merging of those energies in a way cancel out the separative nature of each other.
That's right. And, you know, we all want union with the divine energy, whether it's we feel it within and we feel our oneness, or whether it's some social, energetic unification and alliance or simpatico. This is why and how soulmates work together. They help foster that sense of union in both people. And ideally, you know, it's a healthy one, because there's been a lot of healing that's gone on, and there's been a lot of inner unification of the two soulmates coming together. But even as imperfect as we are, having a soulmate is a fast track to spiritual growth. That was Sri Kaleshwar's one of his main teachings, which is so surprising because most traditions advocate celibacy and so forth, which is a path. But Sri Kaleshwar was advocating soulmatehood. And he said that Mother Mary and Jesus were soulmates, not in the, again, conjugal sense, but in the energetic sense. And that to me is so touching and healing. And I go into that extensively in The Secret Life of Mother Mary as well.
And we can have more than one soulmate at different times in our lives, which is really important to be open to, because we have this tendency to narrow things down way too much.
Right. Like there's only one. And I think that we can evolve out of certain soulmates and evolve into new ones.
Exactly. And many of us do.
Yes. You know, that's the one thing we don't talk about with soulmates, that, you can be complete with a soulmate.
Right. Because our divine experience is something that is totally natural to us, but it's also evolving as well.
Yeah. There's continual evolution. And you certainly want there to be, otherwise you're going to get into stagnation. And that's where a lot of people are on the planet, which is why they'll use drugs and alcohol to try to feel some sense of relief or connection with something, something divine or bigger than themselves, or, you know. So we want to kind of move out of needing all of that by cultivating the inner garden, really.
Mm-hmm. So you had talked about how Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and other Marys work together, or they're working on you could call it a global level. And back 2,000 years ago, they also worked together to support Jesus, or Yeshua, however you want to refer to him.
That's right.
Could you talk more about all of that?
Yes. So these Marys were a tribe of priestesses. The Mary transliteration of Maria or Miriam originally would have been the Egyptian word Mary. The way it's transliterated from the Egyptian is Mary, like we would spell it Meri or Mery, even though they didn't have vowels in that writing. But it was a concept that basically meant divine love. The one who loves, the one who is loved, and the one who is love. That was the name Mary. And it was a title. It was an honorific title connected with Isis. So I talk a lot about that in the book. And, you know, in this book, I also have guided meditations that people can access for free. And so one of them that I've created is this chanting of the sacred name of Mary, with all these iterations of Mary, Mariam, Miriam, Mary. So this was a priestess group. And this is why there are so many Marys named in the New Testament, and going back to the Old Testament with Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses, right? Another Mary. So they would enter this order, this timeless astral order of divine love priestesses and divine sacred womb priestesses. And they were here to help guide and guard the planet. And Magdalene's name, Magdalene, I've traced back, it's not really a place name. It refers to her as being the watchtower. Just like Peter was Shimon, but he was called Kepha or the rock. So Mary was called Magdalene. It was her nickname. Just like Peter, the rock was Peter's nickname. And it meant guardian, the guardian tower, guardian of the flock, and so forth. So these were guardian women, and Mary's and Magdalene's both, in a sense. And this is why I'll just, let your audience know that September 10th, 2024, we are starting the Mary and Magdalene Priestess Training, which is enrolling now, and the enrollment ends at the end of August. It's to get us all back together as Marys and Magdalenes, cultivate what we need to cultivate within for our own lives and also for the life of this world, so that we can step and walk as these Mary healers, facilitators, awakeners. That's what it's all about. I hope that answers one of your, or an angle of your question. Does it, Tonio?
Well, my question was wide open to whatever you had to say.
That's why I love your questions, by the way.
And yeah, this whole tradition, it's really about the embodiment of this experience.
Yes.
In order to walk this plane as we most truly are.
That's right. Wanting to move from the intellectual into the embodied. And that's, I believe, what the Marys are here to show us and encourage us to do, and what this new training is all about, because I don't know of any training like it. I have not heard of anyone doing anything like this. And again, it's not about going into dogma or dogmatic ways of seeing these women. It's about seeing them, understanding them, and drinking of their well on the most esoteric level and putting it into embodied use.
And despite the esoteric nature of it, it's actually a very embodied earthly experience as well.
Practical.
Very practical, very down to earth. It just seems esoteric to our intellectual mind that is unfamiliar with this and can't directly relate to it.
Yeah. And, some people just I love geeking out on all the esoteric stuff, and some people love it. But ultimately, what all this comes down to is love one another. Okay. I think Jesus said that, right? And so this training is about helping us to be able to love one another at its core, and do many other things as well. But how do we stick with the path of love when things are getting annoying and more threatening, right? These are the great tests. And so one of the things we're going to be looking at is character development through what I call the Mary virtues, because I'm taking those virtues, which seem like dreadful things, and and turning them into their actual real essence. So what is prudence? Oh, well, prudence is discernment. Let's use a better term that doesn't sound so dreary, right? So I'm helping us all, myself included, to get on the wagon of cultivating these inner character traits, so that when we have a choice point, we know exactly where to go, where there's no question. Because that's often what happens, where we'll be confronted with a situation and we'll go into an old habituated negative pattern. Whereas, if we could just stop and say, I'm at a bifurcation point, what am I going to do? I'm going to choose the virtue. Okay, that tells me how I need to behave, right? And we're retraining ourselves. That's one element of what we need to do, what the Marys were about, what this training is about, for example, just one layer. But that's how practical it can be.
Right. Instead of knee-jerking our way through life, we learn to embody basically an unconditional love approach to anything that happens in our lives, which embodies all those things like compassion and understanding and wisdom. But it really boils down to unconditional love.
It really does, and that's where cacao is really wonderful. And we will be working a bit with cacao during the training. And then I also have an in-person retreat, the October 11th weekend in New York State, that I'm going to open to the larger community as well, where we're going to be working with cacao both weekend days of it to access the love vibration and really anchor this, really stimulate this within our DNA, because that is such a great teacher of what is the vibration. What does the vibration feel like of unconditional love? It is very, very clear when you're working with cacao, you know. But like, for example, for me, recently I had two little tests that I did not pass. Okay. One was I was in a hotel room in Montreal for the jazz festival, and it's like 1:30 to 3 in the morning. This couple upstairs, they're stomping around and they have loud music. I mean, I've got my earplugs in. My partner's sleeping. I don't want to wake him up, and he doesn't hear things the way I do. So I have to go up there, and I'm like mad as a hornet. And it didn't go over so well, because I just wasn't accessing, I was stressed out. It's 3 in the morning. I'm wanting to sleep. I'm vulnerable and this and that. And I just go up there, and the male just met me with his male hornet energy. And it was just an unpleasant encounter at the door, of his room just above me. And I thought, oh gosh, if I had been really able, and the ironic thing, Tonio, was that like, while I was awake the whole time, I'm thinking about all the Mother Mary, this and that and the other thing. But when it came to putting the pedal to the metal, like I'm in my habituated, I'm being abused kind of trauma response to the situation. And then gosh knows what that guy's trauma response is. How he responded clearly showed me this guy has had trauma. And I could intellectually figure that out later. But in the moment, it was just all those energies flying around. And I thought, oh gosh, I've well, this is where I want to be working on things. And so in this training, along with everyone else, I'm going to be working on things, and we're going to be helping each other. How do we stay the high road in an authentic way, not just in a fake way? What would an empowered Marian approach to that situation have been? I didn't come with love at all. I came with daggers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what road rage is. It happens all the time on the road, like that rude SOB,
And we've all been traumatized, so our traumas are bouncing off each other.
They really are. And I saw that. It was like two mirrors ricocheting when I was up there with that guy. And this is what the Marys are here for as well. And I talk about her in The Secret Life of Mary as a healer. But this goes more than just that she healed leprosy, but it's the inner healing that they're here to do. The inner carnage and destruction and everything that's been set upon this planet by the negative forces. They're like doing a reclamation operation for us.
Right. And healing leprosy and things like that are really just symbolic representations of what's most important that they're teaching.
That's right. And so we need to take their healing inward. And that's why at the end of each chapter, I have these guided meditations that people can go and sign up for and access freely to have the living experience of the relief of being with Mother Mary. There are different themes that I have going on, one for each chapter, and just really being with these energies for a while and experiencing a healing on a particular theme or an empowerment.
So there's one thing I just want to touch on quickly, because you talked about cacao, and that's something that I'm not familiar with. I know what cacao is in the mundane world, but how you're using it and how it's so significant in this process.
Yes, and for this, I really bless my friend and colleague, Angela de la Agua. She was my teacher of cacao ceremonies, and her teachers were Paula Ish, the late Paula Ish, who's not on this plane anymore, and her then partner, Gustavo Eek, both of them from Mexico. So they consider themselves to be of Mayan heritage. And so we're talking the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Olmecs, and more. And this plant, which is a tree, a particularly very interesting kind of tree that has the pods grow right out of the branch without a further branch. It's like different than most fruits. So it's the seeds of the pod. So the cacao tree produces these fruits, but the main feature of the fruit are these very large seeds that are all sit together. They nestle together, and it looks like corn on the inner level, but they're larger and they're the color of like coffee beans. And so when you take them out of the pod, you dry them, you shuck them, and then you grind them into a paste, and then you let the paste harden and break it up. You can melt that, and it is at its best, it should be raw and jungle grown. And there are certain amounts, I teach people the amounts that you use per water or per another liquid. And it's a very earthy tasting substance. And it is the basis of chocolate, and it's the basis of cocoa, but it's taken, boiled, the cocoa butter is taken out of it, or it's adulterated with other things. You're not supposed to boil the cacao to have the strong properties, which when you drink it, it will open your heart energy, your love energy, and it will open your consciousness, not in a psychoactive way like a mushroom or things like that, but you will definitely be having information coming into you. And so it's a beautiful plant. It does raise the heart rate, so you have to be careful that you don't have any heart rate issues, that kind of thing. And it can be done solo, and it can be done in ceremony. And I've done it both ways. I've worked with it for years, since 2017, when I was at the Divine Mother Center receiving that message from them about Mother Mary being the greatest master and the resurrector of Jesus. And that morning, Angela de la Agua had served us cacao. And it was my first cacao. And then we walked over to the cabana and had the lesson. And I was seeing everything, in a whole deeper new way, and just weeping, with gratitude and awe. So the cacao and Mother Mary, to me, are intimately connected because of that initiatory experience. But because cacao is the love substance, the love medicine, it is beautifully suited to the Marys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Mm.
So where would you like to go now? And we could talk about Mary's death passage. We could talk about her connection to the fairy realm and unicorns. We could also talk about Mary's mother's, Anne's own process of divinely conceiving of Mary, and what she had to go through to become receptive enough to be able to do that.
Well, my intuition, Tonio, is to focus on either Mary's passage out of her body and her full ascension, or the fairies and the unicorn, her connection with the fairies and the unicorn.
Well, we could do both.
Yeah. Well, let's look at her death passage, which of course occupies a whole chapter in my book. And it is said that 6 books had been written about this at that time period, of which we have some descriptions, some manuscripts that are, of course, much shorter than that, but they describe how Mother Mary essentially went rainbow body. So the Catholic Church posits that she was assumed into heaven, or she fell asleep. So it's either the Feast of the Dormition or the Feast of the Assumption, depending on whether it's the Roman Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox tradition, I believe. And so both of those are getting at the fact that she did not have an ordinary death passage, but she had a passage more along the lines of what these lamas and monks go through when they achieve the rainbow lights as their soul is crossing out of their body. That phenomenon where rainbows appear either above the body or outside the house. Above, this is a well-known documented phenomenon. And then the body of the monk will disappear, literally, except for the fingernails and the hair.
Mm-hmm.
So the complete life force is moved out of the body and into the other dimension.
And there are lots of stories of that, contemporary stories as well.
That's right.
With lots of witnesses.
Yes, exactly. And so when we put these descriptions of Mary's ascension passage in that context, we understand, this is not just a bunch of Catholic BS, it's describing how the greatest master who ever walked the earth removed herself from her body and went up to extreme goddesshood. And so that's what I describe in this book. And it's really fascinating because I provide a new angle on some of these old manuscripts that allows us to open our doors and our windows to understand what's going on, and so that it doesn't sound so made up and fanciful or fictional about what was happening for her. And then, the evidence that I provide about her going rainbow body is really quite phenomenal as well.
There was another thing that I really enjoyed in the book was that in spite of all your work on divine conception and divine birth, you also consider that this outer divine birth process might actually now be an outdated technology, because it's actually becoming easier and easier for all of us to realize and experience our own divinity and essential nature and liberation.
That's right. The need for high priestesses to bring in avatars is an intervention to a planet that needs an infusion of higher vibrational DNA and some teachings, because that's what these avatars do. They come in, they mate with humans and spread their higher level DNA, and they offer these teachings just like Jesus did, just like Mother Mary did, just like John the Baptist did, just like Plato did, just like Pythagoras did, etc. Okay, these are all divinely born beings. But their point is, and just as the Pleiades did way back when they gave an infusion to the human family of their higher vibrational DNA to help us out here in a planet that was being taken over and going, really wrong. But yes, the idea is that the second coming is within, and it is democratic and open to everyone, anyone who really wants it. And so what we're trying to do is create the earthly conditions so that more people can want it and can actually accomplish it. Because, it's challenging right now to accomplish this inner unification, this inner divinization. So it's a process. It's a process of generations and generations, and hopefully we'll have a quantum leap such that we can just really spring forth into it. But yeah, we all want to become our own avatar, our own, infinity intelligence, right? Embodied in human form on the planet. And these are the great mysteries of our times as we're opening up again to understand this, as many, many more people are opening up and saying, well, how do I do that? What do I need to do? I have to do levels of personal healing. I have to do levels of clearing and opening various chakras and portals so that I can comprehend all of this.
Yeah, and be open to realizing our interconnected nature with everything. A lot of modern spiritual teachers are talking about how the second coming is not going to be an individual, it's going to be a communal thing.
That's right. It's going to be like one big ayahuasca trip together, where we're all feeling and sensing the unity in a higher dimensional frequency. Like, that's the kind of thing that can happen when you're using the high vibe medicines like mushrooms and ayahuasca. It's been documented. People can go into group experiences, right? Many are saying we're in a group experience right now that is very weird. And we need to know that we're on some level of dimensionality, like simulation, if you will. And we want to get to a different dimensionality. We don't want to be running around with just the craziness, grown men who are supposed to be leaders. I mean, just not role models at all. So enter Mother Mary, let's do a third way. Let's do a different way.
Mm-hmm. There was another thing that I'm curious about how it fits into all this. You spoke a little bit or wrote a little bit about Khandana yoga.
Yes, Atma Khandana yoga.
And it reminded me of the dismemberment experiences that many people have during really powerful and intense spiritual initiations.
Yeah. Yes. So this is what Sri Kaleshwar brought forth from the holy palm leaf manuscripts. This concept of Atma Khandana yoga, which is a known practice. So Parakaya Pravesh is the yoga of knowing how to bring a person's body back to life. Atma Khandana yoga is the ability to reconstruct or reconstitute a broken body. And both of those needed to be taking place for Jesus when he was on the cross, if we are adhering to the timeline where that did happen. And for my medicine purposes, yes, I do adhere to that timeline. Like I get medicine out of that reality that he did have a crucifixion. So I work with that. And so what Kaleshwar says is that, and I describe this in my book, which is taken from his wonderful book, The Real Life and Teachings of Jesus Christ, based on his gathering of the information from the palm leaf manuscripts, as well as his past life recall with the Holy Family. And so he describes the sequence of events that Jesus does while he's on the cross that comprise Atma Khandana yoga. And it has to do with time manipulation. It has to do with the extraction of the soul and the retention of a piece of the soul, and a whole sequence of events that has to happen at the time of his crucifixion. And so he's like hanging on by a thread. And then I offer in the book the description of what Mother Mary does with his broken body and the Parakaya Pravesh that she engages to resurrect him. So these are deep mysteries. And described, especially by Kaleshwar, as doable things that advanced humans can do, not just seemingly magical stories that don't have any reality. That's what I love about the piece that Kaleshwar has been bringing in about the Sophia Christos family, which I attempt to translate in my book into its relevance for Mother Mary and for all of us. These were holy adepts who had to work at it like anyone else. I describe in the book Mother Mary's practice that Sri Kaleshwar describes, and that I also found basically paralleled in one of these obscure pieces about her life.
So I'm curious how that relates to Anne's experience, because you described how she had to go through a very intense ego death experience of hitting absolute rock bottom, at which she felt less than anything.
Yeah.
As a required state of humility and a kind of emptying of our vessel to be able to receive whatever divine information and the energies to conceive Mary. Because you also talked about how, when Mary was conceiving Jesus, that she was impregnated by the divine feminine directly.
Yeah, exactly. So most of these details are in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, the previous book that you and I spoke about years ago. I summarize that material in the new book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary. But if people want to get like the real extensive details on all of what you're describing and more, I would recommend they go back to the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. And so the 2 points you're talking about, one, Anne's humility moment, so to speak. What I'm going off of is the gospel known as the Infancy Gospel of James. That's traditionally how it's been handed down by scholars, but its original name was Birth of Mary, because it was all about the conception of Mother Mary by her mother, Mary's infancy and upbringing, and how she was essentially being trained as a divine birth priestess. So for her mother Anne, or Hannah in the Hebrew tradition, for Anne's conception of Mary, now at the time we see Anne, she's in her older years. She's not a maiden like Mother Mary, who conceived from anywhere between 12 and 16 years old, is where we posit how old she was when she conceived Jesus. Anne is older. So she's been, I think, trying her whole life for this divine conception. And when the gospel opens, she and her partner, Joachim, are mourning because this hasn't happened. And so I recognize that it's not just that they're sad they haven't had a child. It's they're upset that she hasn't been able to fulfill her mission as a divine birth priestess to bring forth this avatar, and probably in this plan that has been going on for centuries, of planning and incarnation to bring in the Jesus avatar, essentially. But it's a moment in the gospel that could be missed. But I looked at it and she says, oh, woe is me. I'm lesser even than the sparrows who can freely reproduce. And that's the moment, because I describe that she's essentially in a ritual. She's in a conception ritual. And I describe how that could be. What are all the signs of that? And yes, it's after she has that moment of humility, that death moment, right? That soul death moment, that she is informed by the angel, you've divinely conceived here. This ritual has worked. And so that's, again, about the virtue of humility. One of the virtues we're going to be looking at in the Mary and Magdalene priestess training. This is different from humiliation, even though Anne, in some senses, felt some shame. Humility plus shame is humiliation. So she did undergo some level of shame. But I guess she had to just, like you said, get to that rock bottom of surrender that, gee, maybe this just isn't going to happen. And that's when it happens, right? The surrender moment. So it is akin to the death rebirth experience that some people have, literally a shamanic dismemberment or a very living or visceral upsetting feeling that you can have on some of these medicines, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's also, from the perspective of many spiritual traditions, an essential step before liberation.
That's right. So that was her essential step before liberation. And that happened. And the world was able to be changed because of that in a very dramatic way that we're talking about right now. Thank you, Blessed Hannah. And then you had another point. You were talking about Mary. There was another piece of the question that I'm just not recalling.
Her connection to the fairy realm.
Oh, yes. Yes. Her connection to the fairy realm is something I talk about extensively in The Secret Life of Mother Mary. And it's such a liberation because I taught about Mother Mary and Jesus as she beings, or essentially high fairy beings, at the Fairy and Human Relations Congress back in the summer of 2019. And I taught that seminar, and people were weeping because it was like the unification of Christianity and paganism in a way that no one ever thought could be unified, and everybody thought they had to make a choice. Either I'm with Jesus and Mary or I'm with the fairies, And it's like, no, there are many bridges between those two. In fact, some would say they are one. And I talk about how David Spangler, the great fairy seer David Spangler, has delivered information about that, what information he's delivered about that, as well as the medieval concepts of Mother Mary being connected with every single known flower. She was either named for the flower, or the flower was connected with some significant quality of hers or phase of her life or event in her life. So I make all those connections, and then I take us into the unicorn tapestries, which are all set on a field of flowers and verdant life. And I take us through this initiatory experience of the sacred woman, the priestess, the Mary stand-in, who goes through various initiations of expanding into altered state consciousness through the senses, and with the presence of the unicorn. And so I talk about what is this unicorn. And Tonio, this is something that I'm going to be taking us through in the Mary and Magdalene priestess training. I am going to pull through the information on how to do this initiation that is laid out in the Cluny tapestries in France, and help women access their open states of consciousness through their 5 and 6 senses. And what is the unicorn really in association with that? What is this being? In what dimension does it dwell, or did it dwell? Why do we need to resurrect the unicorn? Why has it been made into a fantasy stuffed animal figure? What is the loss and what is the gain by re-understanding and reincorporating a relationship with the unicorn? So I'll leave those little teasers and hangers to encourage people to both read the book and consider checking out the program. Perhaps you would put the link to the program in your show notes or something.
And you can give the website and ways that people can find it online as well.
Yes, so if people go to my school, sevensistersmysteryschool.com, the 7 is written out, SEVEN, it will all be right there. It's clearly marked that we're enrolling and the link that you can get to the page to find out more information. And that's the main thing that I'm encouraging people to consider now. If you are intrigued by this material, if you want to claim yourself as a sacred woman, this year we're just doing it for women. And I also have other Mary related events that I do. Like I have a monthly Mary and Magdalene Empowerment Circle, where every third Thursday of the month, I take people through a journey of healing or empowerment with one or both of these Marys. Again, for your own reconstruction, your own, achieving your powers, your own activation of your divine DNA and so forth in a container with community online.
Mm. Well, as always, it's been great to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tonio. It's been really wonderful to talk with you. I love how we go into the heights and the depths together. So I really appreciate you.
And I really appreciate you. And I look forward to the further expansion of your discoveries and insights in the future.
Blessed be. Thank you. Yes, to be continued. And hopefully we'll be together again before long.
Yes, indeed. And until then, be well.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. That was Marguerite Rigoglioso. She's a PhD scholar and priestess and founding director of the Seven Sisters Mystery School and a world-renowned teacher of sacred knowledge and the foremost authority on the history of virgin birth. She draws on her decades-long research and experiences with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene to help uncover their teachings and apply them to our present-day needs. She's an award-winning author of several books, including The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births, and her new book that we've been talking about is The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. And that's it for this Magical Mystery Tour. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other.